Hi everyone, and welcome to Noona's Noonchi, where I do a deep dive into some of our favorite K-dramas from a mental health perspective. Ojingo Game, Squid Game, enough said. And it happens to be Mental Illness Awareness Week, so I thought I'd talk about Squid Game and Mental Illness Awareness Week. Let's talk first about Mental Illness Awareness Week. Mental illness is a diagnosis of a mental health disorder. It causes significant changes in your emotions, your thinking, your behavior. It's not uncommon. Numbers are 1 to 5 adults suffer with mental illness, or 1 to 4 adults, depending on what you're looking at. And how am I tying in this to Squid Game? Let me think. Let's talk personality disorders, which is mental illness, specifically antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, pockets of which I see in Ojingo Game, Squid Game. You're thinking in the contestants? No. Not the ones that are literally playing to their death. I am thinking the front man and the old guy. So this is a spoiler alert, but the old guy has some significance, more than what we were seeing throughout the K-drama, right? The old guy shows some signs of, narcissistic personality disorder, and perhaps the front man, antisocial personality disorder. Now let me explain. Antisocial personality disorder, and I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm just trying to highlight mental illness in honor of this week, because I want you to know about it. And it's just what I see. It's actually the first thing I saw. Antisocial, someone who shows complete disregard, violates people's rights. Usually violence is involved. It's behavior that is completely out of the social norms. And these are the folks, that have been behind some of the horrendous, most tragic events around the world. Just saying. And yes, this is a mental illness, and it is diagnosed. Then we have narcissistic personality disorder. People joke about narcissism. Well, it really is nothing to joke about considering it is a mental illness. But narcissistic personality disorder in the old guy, I see it. And I want to say, not so much liking him. Yeah, of course, because human nature is you felt sorry for the guy, and that's part of the twist. Spoiler alert. And then finding out the narcissism in him all along was about the game. And then the joy of playing children's games. But then yet you're talking about human lives here. So that's my highlight for Mental Illness Awareness Week. I really didn't want to stay on that because I wanted to shift Ojingo Game, Squid Game, more in a happier sense, right? Because DP was hard enough with suicide, but I want to talk about K-dramas in a way that how I like to use them and watch them for self-care, to feel better, to enjoy life, to learn from it. And so what can we learn from Squid Game, Ojingo Game, except the obvious of entertainment and really amazing storytelling, the ingeniousness and, is that even a word? Innovativeness, is that even a word? Innovation of using children's games, classic Korean children's games. I did not grow up in Korea, so I never played them. Now, in fact, you were kind of at a disadvantage if you didn't play those Korean games, according to the contestants. I don't know why I'm calling them contestants. Well, it's a game, right? But my husband, who I consulted with, who actually I told about that he would enjoy watching this K-drama because all the hype, and of course, to be supportive, I watched it with him. Very well done. It's fascinating, very entertaining. Yeah, I did kind of close my eyes like this with some of the harder scenes to watch, those shooting scenes, blood galore. But then the fascination of the children's and the cinematography and the almost animated like features of this game that they're in. It's like basically the Korean version of the Hunger Games, and you're putting human lives at risk and trying to, it's like the survival of the fittest, all the things that you see throughout. Yes. What do I want to get at? Gganbu, episode 6. I'm sure you're well aware that was a very poignant episode about friendship, sure, but I think it goes deeper than that. If we're talking mental health, and then remember, I defined mental illness, diagnosis of a mental health disorder. It is not the same as mental health. That episode encompasses things I want to see in a K-drama. An example of people who are on their deathbed, for instance, share things that they regret that has happened, things that they haven't ever shared, things they want to admit to their loved ones and friends. That's kind of what happened here between the two women, Sebyok and Jiyoung. I'm going to say now, out of the entire Squid Game K-drama, who are the heroes? The women. Just saying. Well, specifically two. Jiyoung and Sebyok. Sebyok is the main girl, right? The North Korean defector. But wow, that brief moment, I mean, it was like snippets of scenes. It's really just like 4 scenes in the entire K-drama, but powerful. And I believe that's part of the underlying message. The hope in the midst of chaos and darkness fighting for lives, killing one another for money that they desperately want and need. But then that glimmer of hope where she's like, let's just talk. And and you see that and you're like, huh? But then of course Sebyok's like, okay. And you hear their stories. And I think in that episode alone was the humanity of life, right? Humanity is also their dialectics and dualities of humanity. It doesn't look just one way. Right? You're thinking, wow, how can people invent this game to kill each other, like the Hunger Games? But again, that also represents humanity where it's just not one look at it. There are tortured people out there, traumatized people, people who are desperate. I'm in mental health, so you see that. People who are victims and people who are the perpetrators, yes. And those perpetrators also have stories, right? Tragic stories behind them as well. Some not all tragic. But in that moment of episode 6, when they really get to know each other, and gosh, the girl, this is a spoiler alert, decides to give it all up for her friend, but it's not really so much she was thinking so much for her friend, like, I'm going to do this for you. It's more like, well, and this is what's sad, I try to think about weighing my options. What do I have to live for, right? What do I have to live for when I get out of this? And then that's why she made the decision. You have something to live for, or people to live for, things out there for you. I do not. I want to point that out because let's not make that a choice. What do you live for? Who do you have depending on you? Look at that and invest in that. This is just a moment of the everyday mindfulness concept of investing in your loved ones, people who give back to you, the reciprocal kindness. There's kindness also in this too, but she makes that choice. Because if she had the similar things to live for, she maybe not made that choice. But it wasn't about, let me do this for you as a friend. No, this is easy for me to do, Sebyok. I really don't have much to live for. Nobody wants to hear that. So I'm asking you not to live your life that way where you decide you have nothing to live for at the end. And then we fast forward, I'm going to share this too. Sebyok, you love her already because she's like that grit, the girl that's there, the main character besides the other one that's a little bit more nasty, that does something also, I think, heroic too. But Sebyok stops the main character, Ki-hoon, in episode 8 from, this is a spoiler alert, from basically doing something that would completely change his trajectory of his inner soul, morally speaking. He was about to make a choice, but it was his choice. Understandably so. But Sebyok stops him just in her weak voice because she's dying and says, what are you doing? Don't do it. And then she says, Ajashi, right? This isn't you. This is not who you are. I thought that was poignant. So yeah, people would say the male protagonist is the hero. Sure, sort of. I love his story too, but I'm not here to talk about that. I want to point out those stories that you really see that grip you, and that's her, Sebyok. The North Korean defector that escaped, has her own history of tragedy, comes in desperation because she came without money because they were escaping North Korea to South Korea, has a younger brother to look for, and then says that and stops him in that moment, and he does stop. And it's not like she had to grab him, pull him back. She said in a very weak voice, and she just reminded him who he was or who he is. Don't you think that's amazing? Because if you watch that particular episode, that literally changes the course of a decision. Who are the people like that? That to me is an example of Gganbu. Gganbu, sorry, that word means, okay, so the old man explained in episode 6. So I've done some research. Apparently it's not as clear what that really means and whether that's a word. Now, my husband, who grew up in Korea until he was like 10 or 11, didn't understand it either. He's like, yeah, I don't know what that word is, but the old man explained it, and he said it's friendship, neighborhood friendship. It's people you really trust, that friend you give your all to. What's mine is yours, yours is mine. That best buddy, right? Bosom buddies. Maybe it's like a bosom friend, as we know from Anna Green Gables. Gganbu. The Gganbu there was the girl, Chi-young, in episode 6, who's like, I'm just not going to play this game. Right? And sure, maybe it's self-suicide, but I don't see it that way. I think it's just sacrifice, and then she was killed. Yeah, spoiler alert there. But then we have episode 8. And the Gganbu there is a reminder of who somebody is. Do you have those people in your life? I mean, that's the bottom line here. The Gganbu in your life is to look out for. It does not just have to be a friend. It could be a colleague, somebody you work with, right? Somebody you look up to, a mentor, somebody who taught you years ago, a teacher, educator, or even your spouse, partner, significant other, family member, cousin. Does that make sense? There's no linear way of looking at this. Humanity, like I said, there's dualities to everything. You saw selfish acts and selfless acts in Squid Game, Ojingo Game. they all make sense. That's why we're watching it. If it was just one-sided of way humanity is, we wouldn't enjoy the drama so much. But we saw parts of understanding it. And then the fact that they have the children's games. By the way, this was a reminder of how I didn't know any of those games because I didn't grow up in Korea. But this really appeals to Gen X baby boomers. They played those games. Maybe they're still being played. I don't know. But original game, my husband explained it to me really well. He played it. And also, and you know that Gganbu, that sugar game when they're like pulling out with the needle and then they had to get the shapes like the umbrella, the triangle, right? I forget the other shapes, but they're the shapes I had to get out in the sugar. And that's a real game. And my husband also played that. So I asked him, what did you think? What did you think of this when you're seeing a children's game that you really enjoyed and in this way? And honestly, the answer is, he didn't think one way in the sense of, yeah, it disturbed me. That's what I mean by humanity. It makes sense. When you're a child playing those games, you want to win, and you're not thinking death to win. But when you're a child, you want to win at all costs, so that's pretty much kind of similar to the end goal. Am I making sense? I'm diverting for a second. I just wanted to bring up Gganbu. Who is your Gganbu in your life? Whether that's a word or not, it's in episode 6 of Squid Game, original game. Watch it. It's for fun. Don't watch it for self-care. Watch it and then watch Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha, Reply 1988, My Mr. Startup, those fun dramas to help you get through this. But watch it to understand that sliver of hope and kindness is throughout that drama. And episode 6 and end of episode 8, the Gganbu there is really real and poignant. So I need you to find that Gganbu in your life. It could be a neighborhood friend or maybe someone you need to rekindle with. And then don't be like the old man on the deathbed saying narcissistic, we felt like having too much money, there really wasn't anything to live for. I disagree with that. Use your money for good. Again, the narcissism that I saw there, and I'm not saying it lightly because we make fun of people who are narcissistic, but narcissistic personality disorder exists. So in light of Mental Illness Awareness Week, I want to point that out to you. That, they could have used that money to donate or use for good to fulfill what they needed that was lacking, right? To use it for good, build a nonprofit. I'm just saying, that's just an example, okay? So yeah, money doesn't buy you happiness is the bottom message of that as well, but it can buy you other things in the sense of things that not literally buy you, but what can it give you or what can you do to give back? And maybe you don't have all that money and just live on what you need to live, modestly speaking, right? So that said, remember the Gganbu, Squid Game, look out for pockets of hope in that. You're watching to be entertained and people tend to talk about the darkness. Let's bring out the fun, the lightness. That's what I'm trying to do in this K-drama specifically and things that we can learn from it to improve our mental health. More comments, let me know. If you want to know more about Mental Illness Awareness Week, check out NAMI's website. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI.org. Thanks for watching Noona's Noonchi. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to get notified of new episodes to come.